he ditched the sweaty tennis headband. He spent 5 hours on the court this morning. I would consider this like a post-match interview, kind of. Andy Brill is with me. He's shaking his head. I'm
I
watching
should have a
Wimbledon.
towel and like one of those Evian bottles of water, right? Like they always have at the
Yeah,
press table.
yeah. You would fit perfect in sort of like a model role of that. Get you on some sort of advertisement. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio and also a broadcaster with live events. Andy, we're going to have fun talking about your life here. And obviously, you've got the countdown. Oh, maybe a lot of people watch this after you get married. So this will be interesting to get your thoughts going into that. Also, you're a very well-known independent media broadcast professional. There's not a day that you're not working somewhere. It's incredible. You basically own an apartment on an airplane. But what I wanted to start here. On a lot of your profiles, you say you're decent at tennis. Why are you selling yourself so short?
Nah, it's just part of my self-deprecating humor, I know I'm slightly better than decent, but I mean, I'm turning 50 this year and I'm pretty proud of how I play for a 50-year-old. I wish I played when I was 20 the way I play now, to be honest with you. But, the joke is I'm a decent tennis player. I'm an average CrossFitter. That's another thing I've been doing for 10 years. But truth be told, I mean, I use Facebook for mostly humor and family related posts and silliness. I don't get involved in some of the dramas and the politics and the personal dramas that people sometimes air on Facebook. But I like to joke and I like the sarcasm of it all. So it's really meant to just be a little bit of self-deprecating sarcasm more than anything.
Well, that's what I want to capture in this conversation because I love your personality. I knew this was going to be really fun. But for somebody like yourself who is about to get married, is working constantly, how do you find 5 hours this morning / afternoon to play tennis? And how is your fiance taking that?
So the coolest thing about being a freelancer / independent contractor is, you kind of make your own calendar. You take, great, thankfully and gratefully, I do stay pretty busy, but living in the Northeast, living in New York, I look forward to these summer months because that's when I know I can go outside, enjoy the hot weather, which I love, and play tennis. And so I keep my calendar just a little bit more open in June, July, and August than I do the rest of the year. I still work, but I also am sure to take enough days every week off where what I like to do on a day off, weather permitting, is wake up at early in the morning and hit the court and stay out there as long as either I'm physically able or that there's another person out there willing to stay on the court with me. And my fiance works 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. 5 days a week. So it kind of works perfectly that I try to get home right around, if not early, I try to get home in time for when she's off the clock. And then we spend the rest of our afternoon and evenings together.
What's the similarity between you as a competitor on the tennis court and you working in a competitive industry and how you've had to channel your own competitive ways into building out the career that you've been able to do?
Well, although our industry has always been considered very competitive, regardless of what position you have, whether on air or behind the scenes, I think I'm way more competitive on the tennis court than I am in television production. I definitely I don't take the losses or the defeats away off the court with me and like linger on them. But when I'm playing tennis, I'm very competitive and I get in the mode. And when I work, I just have a fun adrenaline rush. Like I get that it's competitive, but I think that if you do a good job at if you're good at what you do, and I mean this in the most with humility, if you're good at what you do, I feel like you will be rewarded by continuing to get to do what you do, and the opportunities will continue to come. And you don't have to be competitive or cutthroat about it. You don't have to worry about what someone else is doing, even if they want to do the same kind of work as you. There's enough out there, and if you're good at what you do, your opportunities will never dry up, at least not for a long while. So I look at work not in a competitive way, but just in that fun adrenaline rush. I love what I do and I take it seriously, but my running joke on Facebook is, my tagline is I have absolutely no responsibility here whatsoever. And it took a while for some of the people who are not so good with sarcasm to understand what I was doing. But I'm not the kind of person to say, just kidding, haha, joking. You kind of have to figure out which part of me is joking, which is not. But the short answer to your question is that it is a very competitive industry, but I don't think it's healthy to be too competitive about what you do. Be good at what you do, and I feel like the rest takes care of itself.
When did you learn that? Not, I mean, to be competitive to a point, but not to let it overwhelm you.
I think having the right influences matter. Everybody comes up a different way. I'm a lifelong freelancer, so I've never been staff at one particular network or company. And maybe the experiences of someone who works around the same people all the time, perhaps there is an internal unspoken competitiveness amongst people who come up maybe along the same time about who's going to get the promotion first, or who's going to get the call to move up the ladder first. But as a freelancer in such an infinite pool of people, I just have never really looked at it that way. There's no coworkers that I'm around every day. The people who I work with change every day. As a freelancer, it's a variety. Who I work with today is completely different, maybe than who I work with tomorrow, and so on. Some of the one-off shows, and then just the slightly longer-term projects, or maybe you work in Olympics, which could be a few weeks at a time. But regardless of the show, I'm always it's the variety that I love, and I'm always around a different set of people. So I feel like I'm around a lot more personalities than maybe some of the people who are staff or just one network, let's say, that only know their core group of people. And I don't know, I feel like that's healthier in some respects, even though being having a full-time job is fantastic. There's no negative to that in this industry. I think that represents a small minority of us. I think the majority of us in our industry are freelancers and work for a lot of different people. But I just love being able to see different people's mentalities towards how they approach the same type of work I do. Everybody's different. There's no clone. There's no one way to do it, right or wrong. I think the way that I approach my work is maybe not equaled by anyone. We all have our own uh, ways that we prepare for a show. We all have our own ways that we work when we're actually on the day of, but we'll have our different ways of how we communicate with the people that we work with. I'm very proud of how I think I handle myself in all of those environments. But there's plenty of people out there who probably do just as good a job as me and have their own methodology.
You're like a chameleon in that you have different tactics for different jobs. You probably employ different tactics depending upon your opponent on the other side of the net when you're playing tennis. I don't take you for a serve and volleyer. I kind of take you as like an aggressive baseliner who maybe will work in a drop shot or two, but I could be guessing there. Andy
Nah,
Brill,
you're that's pretty good.
is
I
it?
am mostly a baseliner, although in the last year and a half, I have been playing more competitive doubles to help my net game. So just long story short, I do try to throw in some serve and volley more than I ever used to. But you're right. I've always been sort of the big baseliner. I got to be honest with you. I almost never even do drop shots. That's not even my game. I don't know how to I don't know how to just like I'm not good at taking the pace off
Yeah.
of the way I play. I'm more of a keep the pace up kind of player. But funny you should say that. I definitely have always been mostly considered a baseliner most of my life.
I just had that sense from you. And it's so hard to pull off a forehand drop shot. And I admire those who can pull that off really well because if it is really quite the weapon if you can.
I
And
like it when people try to do it against me though, because like my speed is actually I'm faster on the court now than I was when I was younger. Probably the CrossFit stuff probably helps with that. But amongst the folks I play with, they often comment how fast I am now, and I'm getting to shots I used to not. So I love it when the other guy attempts to drop shot because I love to hustle in and get there and get the shot that they think I'm not going to get
well, let me bring in a parallel here, Andy. So you've got great court coverage in tennis
Yeah,
and the court coverage per se in the world of sports media. There's really nothing you can't do. And the basis of this conversation is for people to realize that Brill, your last name, is actually short for brilliant. And that's what I'm trying to get out here with us having this chat. But for you to be in that mindset of someone who is, and we talked about it, is so focused on a certain mentality and mindset. How do you find your soon to be wife humbles you when she comes in the most, whether it's tennis, whether it's work, when she sort of sets you straight a little bit?
Well, my almost wife, the future wifey for lifey, and fiance Knowles, and all the other names we have for her, the lady friend. The one thing that she's brought to the table for me in my life, well, she's brought a lot of things, but one of the big things she's brought for me was just a better work-life balance. I
Mm.
still love what I do for a living. I'm turning 50 this year. I'm not even remotely. Some people dream about, oh, 10 more years till I retire, 15 more years. Like, it's not even an industry that I'm looking to stop working in. Maybe I'll lighten my load or take more time off, but I love what I do. But the one thing that she's taught me is it's okay to say no to a job. It's okay to keep a day open here, a day open there. My running joke with her when I'm off, when I have a day off in like the middle of the winter, is, okay, I'm unemployed today. She's like, "You're not unemployed." She's like, "Normal people have days off. That's what you're supposed to do." Things like that. She's phenomenal at reminding me that I don't have to pack my schedule wall to wall all the time. And like I said, in the non-summer months where tennis is not something I can play all the time, or it's harder to schedule, I normally, before I was with Michelle, it would be, I'd rather work every day than have a day off. Like, if I had a day off in the middle of February, I'd be bored. I wouldn't do anything. I'd just sit around home. I go, I'd rather be working. But she's great. She's been great at reminding me, even if it's just leisure time, to remember to not let the days and the months fly by all the time, and to slow it down. And she's good at teaching me to slow it down and enjoy the free time and the intervals between the jobs and between the assignments.
She's helping you live in the moment.
Yeah,
Your
which I didn't
wife's
never did. I was bad at it. I
why is it
always
so
look
hard in
forward to
this
the
business?
next gig because I always was thinking about the next gig. Like, I always give my all to whatever show I'm on, and I give it 100% in my prep and my execution. But then I'm always looking at, and then what's next, or the days where even I'm working on two or three different things concurrently. And then all of a sudden, if I have a day, oh my god, I've got nothing to prep for today. Um, that would be weird to me. That would almost be like 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 a negative somehow, that I would have a day with no take home work or nothing to like read up on or to get ready for. Uh, and she's kind of changed my mindset about that.
It's hard because even when you're so gung ho, it's hard maybe, and I don't want to speak for you, but like beating yourself up. Like, I'm supposed to work every day, and that there's this guilt that comes in. You feel like you should be doing this. And like, how do you feel like you've handled that? Because nobody should have to work, you know, 365 days a year. I mean, hopefully not. But for you to turn that off, how much better with your wife's assistance have you come along in that department?
Um, like I said, I think the mentality of it and still, I'm still learning to do it. Like,
Yeah.
there are some days where I'm really grateful that I have more free time here and there and can enjoy, like you said, what do they say? Stop and smell the roses, right? Like, just stop and enjoy the moment. Um, but when I know that I can spend time with Michelle, or we can have an afternoon of doing whatever it is we do, and go out, or just even just spend time at home together, it's valuable time. It's important time. And when I was before I started dating Michelle, and I'm living alone and single, and I'm my own person, I'm just thinking of me, right? I'm not really, you're not keeping dates open for anyone. You're not, except for the occasional family event or something very specific that you know about in advance. If I have a Tuesday and a Wednesday next week available, and someone calls me and goes, "Hey, are you available next Tuesday and Wednesday?" I don't even need a nanosecond to say, "Yeah, I'm available." Now, if those are the only 2 days I might have been off in a 10-day span or a 12-day span, I'm not as quick to say yes. I think about it. I might run it by Michelle. Not that she ever has asked me to say no to any gig. She's amazing. We respect each other's work and our schedules, and also our social time. That might not always be with her friends and my friends, but I do think for two people now when things come up that are going to fill days on a calendar. And it's a learning it's a learning curve, but it's a really important one. It's a good one. It's a good one to it's good to have someone else's feelings and thoughts on something matter. You know, it kind of makes the whole thing feel more important in a way.
I love just your raw openness into how you've changed your mentality from being more present to being more appreciative of, you know, not just yourself, but you've sort of, because to your point, when you're looking at the next role and just continuing to look, it can be not, I don't think selfish is the right word, but it's just self-centered and not in not in
I
like a
agree.
negative. Yeah, and not in a negative connotation, but like just because that's all you know. And so how you've sort of opened up your world to something new and beautiful is really cool. Andy Brill is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley, and there's really not anything you can't do in this business. Like, what can't you do, Andy? Because from the spectrum of work, I can't find anything that you're not able to do.
Well, I mean, first of all, it's very kind of you. I will say that amongst my fellow freelancers, I'm proud to say that I'm probably in sort of a maybe the top 1 or 2 percentile in terms of the diversity of different kinds of jobs I can do on a given production. Not a lot of people have a specific niche, a cameraman or a TD or a replay operator or a graphics operator. There's a lot of people really good at a job and that's their thing. And that's fantastic. But I've kind of always had a not so secret ambition to move up and to have opportunities to produce and to direct and to be one of the people who has a say in the content of a show that he works on. And so I've been blessed to have, so I do work on the technical side with a lot of I know how to operate all the various graphic software that is used in our industry, both in sports, entertainment, news, corporate. And then I also know how to produce that content. And then I also know how to do a lot of those, as we call above the line jobs, production jobs in our industry, the producing, the directing, the assistant directing. Feature producing. Back in the day when I first started, I was actually more in the post-production world than I was live. The first like year and a half I was in this industry, I spent almost all my time in edit rooms working with editors and putting together, building shows and features, and then switched over to the live side, and the adrenaline rush of the live side took me immediately, and then I never wanted to go back to post-production. I would much rather be sitting in a TV truck somewhere, anywhere, working on a show than sitting in an edit room. But yeah, so just over the years, I've always built up. I've always never been afraid to learn a new skill in our industry. There's definitely things I don't know how to do, by the way. I'm not a cameraman. I'm not a TD. I'm not an editor on my own right. There's a lot of areas of our industry that I don't do or sell myself as. But I think that the diversity of kinds of gigs I can do and the kind of slots I can fill in a production are part of what keeps me as thankfully as busy as I've been able to keep myself over the years. Is because, I might be producing a college basketball game on Monday, and then on Tuesday I'm the graphics operator for a local entertainment show in New York City, and then on Wednesday I'm getting on a plane to go spend 3 days somewhere remotely to be a producer, work graphics on a mixed martial arts show, which is what I'm doing this weekend or something like that. But I love that. I love that variety, and I have no, I don't know what the right word is, but I have no pride. I'm fine swallowing my pride with one day being, I could be producing a show and the guy in the tape room, I'm telling him what replays to run. And then later that weekend, I'm the graphics operator and he's still in the tape room for another show. And all of a sudden, there's someone else that's the producer. Like sometimes I get to call the shots and a lot of times someone else is telling me what they want. But I'm good with that. Like my level of responsibility from show to show can change. And there's some shows where there's a lot of prep I have to do on my part. And then there's other shows where you don't have to think about it till you walk in the door that day. And it's also good that I sprinkle in those kinds of jobs in my weeks and my months that don't think about it till you show up jobs, because that's sort of a mental break too from the jobs that you really have to dig in and prepare for. And then I can work a show where I don't even have to think about it until I arrive. There's nothing I have to prepare for. So it's nice to have a balance of both of those types of things as well.
That's so interesting, the way in which you've plotted out your career. And there's not a lot of ego. I'm not sensing now, maybe on the tennis court,
I mean, I
but
hate to lose on the tennis court, but once it's over, it's over. I
Well,
don't have a long memory, win or lose, for what I do on the tennis court. It's not worth it.
you don't go back maybe and watch the tape of your tennis matches, but to you, where do you say finishing up a show where you what does the show have to do for you to say, all right, I did a good job?
Well, first of all, the biggest difference between the post production world I used to be in and the live world is that in the post production world, you never stop wanting to tweak and adjust and tighten the screws in something that you're involved with. And then when it finally hits air, you're still always your own harshest critic, because you're like, oh, I probably could have done that, or I probably could have put that there, or probably could have put a different piece of music. Whatever it is, you never stop dissecting the material that you produce. And when I switched to the live side, while you always want to be perfect, there's no such thing as perfect in live TV. There's in the grand scheme of a production, maybe you didn't think of using a graphic at a time where it would have been perfect. You didn't cut to the certain shot that might have been the right time to cut to the shot, or run the certain replay at the right time. Or an announcer, as you would understand, maybe there's a point that would have been a great point to hit right then and there, or a stat you knew about a guy and you didn't think, maybe you didn't get to it exactly. Nothing's perfect. But when the show is over, if everybody did their job well and you had a good production and there's nothing technically that anyone watching at home would go, what was that? Or anything that's a negative, you always feel pretty good. And then you still might critique your own work or think there's something you can do better. But I don't think I've ever been really hard on myself on anything I've done live. I feel really good about the work I do. And I feel like the success comes from the preparation, which I think you would agree with. I think anything you're involved in is better when you give it the time you should, to if you're calling play by play on a basketball game, you're reading the game notes, you know the stats, you're putting your boards together, you've got all your miscellaneous notes that you like to hit up about a player, whether it's personal notes or stats or something they did in a recent game. But that knowledge will come through on the air versus someone who maybe just generically calls a game but doesn't really give you a lot of meat and potatoes about a lot of the players or their what they've been doing, their path to that moment has been. And then you can still have a perfectly good production, but there's a difference in the quality of what you brought to the table. I always hold myself to a high standard and believe that I bring preparation and knowledge about what I'm working on to the table. And if it's a sport I'm not as familiar with, which occasionally happens, maybe I get involved in a production like a rugby game, and I'm not a rugby expert, but I know enough to do it right. And I learn what I have to learn. And sometimes you work with people and you can just tell who does the homework and who doesn't, I guess is I'm sorry that I give you this such long form answers
No, I
first.
like this.
You can tell when you work with people, especially work with a variety of people, which is what I said is one of my favorite things as a freelancer. You can just tell who puts in the time, and you can tell which people, when you work with, are going to be like, all right, this guy's he's going to have his content. He's going to know what he wants to talk about. He's going to know what he wants to hit on. He's going to know what matters in this moment, versus someone who just sort of lets the event, drag them along. I call it like a water skiing producer director, where you're hanging on to the rope and letting it pull you wherever it's going to pull you. You got to have control, right? You got to have control of what you're working on. So I'm proud that I never walk into a show. There's a lot of different lingo. Like I've never been a mail it in guy or do the bare minimum, or because it's a show, say that's a smaller streaming production, not a major, let's say it's not a major sporting event, or it's a low level sports show. I'm still going to do that show and treat it like it matters as much as anything that matters should matter at that moment, because that's why you're hired. You're hired to present that event in the highest and best light you can, and not have a mail it in attitude, go, well, this is just on the internet, or this is just a local soccer game or something like that. I don't think that that's a good mentality for anyone to ever have. I don't think that the type of show you're doing should change and affect how you approach your job on that show.
And how has that approach been so well received in that your network is so vast? You could get a call or 10 in a day to say, can you do this day? Can you do that day? Can you do this show? Can you do that show? The approach that you just described, how much do you think that has played into why your network is as big as it is?
Well, again, it's kind of a cliche, but early on, I was always told no news is good news. And if someone calls you and says they want you to work, and then you hear from them again and they want you to work with them again, then that's the equivalent of a great job, attaboy, pat on the back, which you don't always get. Not everybody in this industry is always gonna throw praise your way in a verbal way, but you're rewarded by getting more work. The reward is you keep working. Uh, uh, and um, and then the other great reward is good word of mouth. When I get the calls from someone who I've never heard of, but they say, "Hey, so and so recommended you. I don't think we've worked together before. My name is so and so, and I have this show coming up," and they say that you're the guy to call. Like that's the greatest feeling. The greatest feeling is when someone who's like a peer values and knows what you do, and then when someone asks that person, "Hey, do you have a recommendation for this role, that role?" that you're the name that comes up on the top of their head or one of them. Like that's the best. That's the greatest reward to me is when those moments happen. And whether I'm available or not available to work for that person, I always love to work for new people. I always love to ever expand that network. But like just the value of knowing that that person's reaching out because someone said this is the guy to call. I love that. And again, I'm not special in that I'm the only person capable of getting that call. There are other. I am not alone at being good at some of the things I do. There are others out there that are as good and maybe better at some of the things that I do or get to do it more frequently. Um, but I know I'm at least as good as that pool is. To go back to that, not trying to be competitive in mentality. Like I'm certainly not. Uh, I don't get jealous or envious if someone else got a call about a job before I did, or I find out in just small talk with someone, "Oh, you're working on that show." Like sometimes deep down, people are like jealous, or they wish they were on the gig that this other guy get, or they're like, "Oh, how did that guy get that call and I didn't?" Or why were they reaching out? There's some of that going on. It's part of our industry. I guess it's human nature to have that happen. But like I said, there's enough stuff out there for everyone. And if you're good at what you do, I just feel like the calls and the work keep coming. And I'm not a niche guy. Like as much as I love working all the major sports, I'll work a one-off corporate show, an entertainment show, a news special. I'll do some streaming show for like esports, whatever. I don't care what the event is. I want to work it. If I'm available and I feel like it's something I can bring something to the table, I want to be involved. Like I'm not just a pro sports guy or just a major team sports guy or just, oh, I only work for ESPN and CBS. I'll work for anybody as long as it makes sense to work for them, for the right reasons.
You challenge yourself, which is why you have this phone book of, I don't know if anybody knows what a phone book is anymore, but just to think about the network that you have, it is the size of one of those phone books. And I love what you said there, Andy, and that is there is work out there for others. You, at the bottom of all of this, underneath all the words you're saying, is someone who's very humble, but at the same time, confident in your work. I think those two can go hand in hand. Humble and confident in your work. Now, tennis court wise, maybe that's something different. But when it comes to the sports of you working in them from a broadcast perspective, that is you in a nutshell. And to wrap this up, Andy, your last name might be Brill, but I just want to say that I think that there might be a misspelling. It really is brilliant.
Well, that's very kind of you to
And I
say.
appreciate you doing this. Thanks so much, man.
Of course, man. Listen, all I know is that anyone, if you have people who watch this that are trying to get into our industry, or really anyone for that matter, it's do the job. It's don't don't like you said. You can be a little bit self-centered about focusing on what you're doing, and I almost think that's better than worrying about what other people are doing. Think about what you are doing. Do it the right way, and get noticed the right way, because you will be. If you do a good job, you'll get the you'll get the attention that every human being so desires, regardless of what form it comes in. You'll get the notice that you want if you're doing the job right, and you think about you and not what other people are doing.
Couldn't have said it any better. And just to finish this up, so many hardworking people behind the scenes that have stories that need to be told. And I appreciate you having the confidence in me to help tell that story. And I really appreciate your time.
Well, again, I'm humbled and appreciative that you would want to talk to me about this, and I hope that there are more people out there in the industry that you get a chance to have these kind of conversations with. It's a pretty vast network, as you said, and there's a lot of different personalities. There's a lot of colorful personalities, and I'm sure that you have a plethora of folks you could choose from who could entertain the masses.